Hey everyone, Ed here from N Advantage. I want to start something different and talk about some of the latest research, trends, articles that I find interesting, mostly related to marketing and business, but I might find some other pieces of content related to leadership that I'll be happy to share. And eager to hear your thoughts because I'm hoping to produce this on a regular basis. But let's dive in and talk about some of the interesting things that I found this week related to devices. So as you can see here, and it's really interesting. Children now have more access to devices than adults, and I find this particularly interesting because I have two kids. My son just got an iPad last Christmas, so he's literally not even owned it for a year yet, and he's on it constantly. But from the chart here, in almost every category, aside from smartphones, children have more access and are in possession of devices from laptops to smartwatches, which what do you consider a smartwatch? It's something that I want to know. This is from Razorfish. A lot of the research and the stats that I find are from different sources: CMO Council, Razorfish eMarketer, HubSpot, Statista. All of these different sources. This one just happens to be from Razorfish. My son also has a smartwatch, although I don't know if I would consider it a smartwatch because it just has some games on it and a couple of other applications. I don't know if it has Wi-Fi capabilities. So I'm curious to hear how smartwatches are defined. But even in laptops, children have more than 65% of them have laptops, access to laptops, compared with just over 60% of adults. Gaming console, no surprise there. And one of the things to keep in mind that I found interesting as a result of the research was that they found that 65% of parents of Generation Alpha think tech positively impacts their child. If you don't know, Generation Alpha is a generation of children or people born between 2010 and 2024. And that is going to be the largest population so far. It's estimated to be the largest, I should say. 86% of US Generation Alphas would like their favorite brands to teach them something about their interests, according to Razorfish. So clearly, there's an appetite and a huge market of this growing population. One of the things that I find interesting as a marketer is how this has been shifting the use of technology, especially when you think about the the ownership of these devices. When you think about ad targeting and segmentation and things like that, as a marketer, we tend to very try to hyper focus on certain demographics and populations for segmentation, for personalization, and to ensure relevancy. But I think that there's a challenge here to do that when a lot of these devices may be accessible by children, but they might not necessarily have their profile attached to that. So, as an example, obviously this is just anecdotally, but I'm sure it happens in many cases as I speak to even some of the parents here and where I'm from, where I live. But my son also has a laptop. It's not his. It's a laptop that I previously owned. It's an old 2011 MacBook Air, maybe, but I no longer use it. Haven't used it in years. But it still has my profile attached to that. So there is the possibility that users or that brands, as my son is browsing the internet or playing games or whatever he's doing, might be inaccurately targeted because that device is still associated to me and my profile. Uh, so that's something interesting. I think some that advertisers and brands need to keep in mind because again, we want to focus on the devices, but that might not necessarily be targeting the actual your target demographic. So on a similar note, with the different generations and devices, one of the things that I found interesting here is about video games. I'm not big. I'm not much of a gamer these days. I used to be back when I was a kid. Had the Nintendo 64, all of that good stuff. I can't remember what was the last game console I had. Maybe GameCube. I think I had it's probably like the last one that I personally owned that wasn't shared with my relatives. But here you can see 53% of U.S. consumers play video games. That's a lot of people. So when you talk about targeting and advertising, where the eyeballs are is where the money follows. So if there's a lot of attention, if there's a lot of people, then there's a huge opportunity to tap into this market of people who are into video games, spend a lot of time on video games. What's also interesting is that US gamers are most likely to use their mobile devices, their phones, rather than computers, according to the research. And US game ad revenues are going to reach almost $9 billion this year, with most of it on going to mobile. So there's been a recent focus for ad tech platforms because of all the attention and the amount of people. So there's clearly an opportunity here for expanding your media buys. I think there's untapped market, and to further emphasize that, if you look at where some of the how some of the users, how some of the gamers are spending their time or really their money, you could see more than 50% spend at least up to $50, excuse me, per year on mobile games. That's a ton of people. And you can see here from the chart, some of them spend even upwards of $500 on mobile games, with most of it going to virtual goods sales. So the research shows that mobile games will generate $24 billion in US in-app purchases this year alone. So again, there's a ton of opportunity here. As someone who, as I mentioned before, has not been much of a gamer recently, I can see how everything from educational apps to business apps, even LinkedIn. Today, LinkedIn, I don't know if it was today, but today, LinkedIn, I noticed a new feature on LinkedIn where they're introducing games. Everything is being gamified. So that is a trend that I don't think is going to stop. Brands want to keep users on their platforms longer. And a great way to do that is through games, because they can be great sources for not only for keeping users on the screen at a session for longer duration sessions, just because of the nature. It's also another opportunity to introduce ads, and obviously it keeps them on longer. So very interesting to see. I think as we, and even myself, as I start seeing some of more of these trends, I'd be interested to figure out where else are you finding some business platforms or other mediums where you're seeing games or being introduced or gamified trends within the tools that you currently use. And that's pretty much it that I have for today's segment. Probably went on longer than I initially was planning to, but very curious to hear your thoughts. As I may have mentioned, I like to do this on a regular basis. I need to come up with a name for this segment. If you go back to my first slide, I had business and marketing research and trends, kind of long. If I make that into an acronym, BAMRAT doesn't really sound that appealing. If you have any thoughts, any ideas, let me know, and drop some comments, and feel free to share your thoughts. Thanks.